word of the Lord from the people of God. Thanks be to God. She was in danger of being ignored. This young woman, unable to conceive a child, was in danger of being cast aside by the society in which she lived. Childless women were seen as nothing and would be swept away like garbage on the street. Her husband was somewhat oblivious to her pain. His other wife was a torment to her. The people believed that it was God's curse that she was barren and unable to conceive children. This is a powerful moment in the life of God's people. From our vantage point, looking where we are now, looking back, we can see where all of their future, their whole future, rests on this moment when Hannah goes to make obligations to God. This critical moment in time, this particular time, with this particular woman, without her ability to conceive, there would be no Samuel. Without Samuel, there's no King David to anoint. Without David, there's no city of David, also known as Bethlehem, and no baby named Jesus, no Christmas. History and the salvation of all of God's people would have taken a different turn. But she was persistent. This obscure young woman persevered in her prayer to God. Traveling with her husband to Shiloh, seated there, she made her plea before God, and God heard her plea. It's an amazing story. And in this story is this moment, and in that moment is God's movement in the world. What's interesting about all of this is it doesn't begin with the movers and the shakers and the judges and the kings, but rather with someone who really isn't even on the stage at all. Hannah wasn't even in the play as she stood outside the theater watching and hoping and praying with her lips moving, just barely. Eli thought she was drunk and dismissed her. I can imagine her thinking, great, someone else who doesn't see what I see. Someone else who doesn't feel what I feel. It could have gone badly for everybody concerned. Big doors swing, it said, on small hinges. And the first moves of God occurred there to her in that place. One writer has said that God's movement through the cosmic history came in this witnessed moment of struggle and in the perseverance of faith of obscure people without power and without influence. I remember a few years ago when Duke Energy, just up the road here, proposed to erect some major transmission lines through North Carolina and into South Carolina, up about the Rock Hill, west of Rock Hill area, I believe. And it was stopped. That whole project was stopped, largely by a grassroots effort of people with initially no power. And I'm sure that for those who would have been negatively affected by this construction and by this transmission line running through property and over creeks and through streams, it affected their perseverance and faith. Maybe it was even a holy moment for them and for the land when Duke dropped that proposed project. But isn't that how it happens in our life? Rosa Parks refusing to move on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Susan B. Anthony leading the beginnings of what would be the Voting Rights Act for women. Upstate residents and acquaintance of mine, Brad Weiss, saying enough to the development of some of our rare and wild areas in northern Greenville and Oconee and Pickens counties. Hannah just wanted a baby. She wanted a future. She was ready to commit this child to God. I'll dedicate him as a Nazarite, she said. A Nazarite is one who is set aside for God's work. One who abstains from wine and grapes and raisins and other fruit that ferment. One who didn't cut their hair for the time of the covenant that they make with God. And God honored her prayer that day because God is a God of the future. God is not locked away in some high tower of glistening gold and jewels and money, but rather is here among the people of God, working hard, always looking forward, always looking forward. You know that Hannah's story from the first chapter of Samuel doesn't end until the birth of Jesus, as Luke records it in his gospel some 1,000 plus years later. 1,000 years of God's working through a story. And that ever-present Spirit still guides us today in Seneca. Sometimes it's hard being a church our size. We're always comparing ourselves to other churches down the street that are larger or seem to have more facilities and more resources. And we say things like, we can't because we're a small church, or we're not as big as you. Or we say things like, I wish we had that and this. We say things like, if we had more people, maybe our finances wouldn't be so right on the line all the time. I know this because it's true. I've done this for 35 years next summer. And I've heard all of those and more. But I like the story of Hannah because it reminds me of us. We often think that just because of our size in the world, we shouldn't be looking for places that God might be calling us to be involved in, that may be bigger and bolder than anything we think we can tackle. My first church in Tennessee was 65 members strong. We would worship about 50, 55 on Sunday morning. One day at a session meeting, I suggested that we host a Presbyterian meeting in our historic church, which was built in 1863. I remember one session member saying that because of the size of the presbytery, which was at the time was about 100 attendees, give or take, generally, that we couldn't do it. They didn't see any possibility, any way of hosting that size of a group in our little sanctuary. You will find out that telling me that we can't do it makes it even much more likely that we will. We got creative. We held the Presbyterian meeting in a church shoulder to shoulder, with only a basement underneath in which to eat, and we did it in shifts. And many, many, many attendees called, wrote, spoke later, and said it was one of the best Presbyterian meetings they'd ever been to. It was hard for the members' chests not to swell a little bit with Presbyterian pride. Hannah had no idea that her son Samuel would be the one to hear God's call and anoint David as king, as a uniter of the people, as a savior of the people, a steady presence in that kingdom for a long time. She had no idea that centuries later, out of David's house would come one who would be the savior of all people, even Jesus Christ. We have been given this time and this space to be a Hannah to the world, to be birth mothers and fathers, to be birth parents of the church of the future. After only 6 months of being here as your interim, I can see that happening in you, in this congregation, in this church. I see it when you minister to each other with love and compassion, and when you meet and engage in conversations with people you don't even know, when you offer help and hope to the community around us, particularly those who are at risk in our community. Just those simple acts can make a difference in the kingdom. Those hinges, the future of this congregation can swing on them. I don't know much about economics. I do know that there are a couple of types of, there are economists here, and you can straighten me up later, but I think there are two types of systems, a couple of types of systems that can be followed. One operates on the basis of the fact that there's only so much money to go around, and we have to be careful with that money, who gets it and who misses out on it. It's a closed system in which that money just keeps going around and around. The other one is a free market economy, which works on the principle of creating wealth by starting a business and tapping into previously unknown sources of revenue. And in that system, the question of how much money there is to go around doesn't even enter the equation. I've read that, in fact, it's possible that no one knows how much a market economy can generate. It's unlimited. You see a niche, you come up with a plan, you get some backing, you raise the funds, you risk the whole thing on this new venture. Will it succeed? You never know until you make that leap. But it's a more hopeful outlook on the future than a closed system is. God doesn't operate in a closed system. God is the God of hope, not a God of despair. God is God of the future, not of the one that says, let's stay put or look behind us at our past. In God's system, the world operates based on the promises that point towards that future with hope and life. Hannah is God's witness to that fact. Her son Samuel found David, anointed him king. David set up a town in whom his great-great-great-great-great-grandson Joseph brought his betrothed, married to, and had a child named Jesus. As we move in a couple of weeks into Advent, with all the expectations and the beauty and the pageantry and the wonder, I wonder what God might be calling us to now that will bring about a life-giving event in the future. It's almost as if God is waiting for Hannah to ask for the child, for her barrenness to come to an end. Hannah had much to ponder in her asking, but ask she did. And God gave her the desires of her heart. May it be so in our lives then, this very day.